One, thank you for coming down, man. I know you're a very busy guy, very busy schedule, so thank you for taking the time.
Of course, man. I appreciate you having me.
And like I was telling you before we got all the cameras rolling, I came across your page 2 or 3 years ago, and I love all the content you've been putting out since. And I had no idea. So you own Archetype, or you run Archetype?
Yeah, yeah.
How long? I really want to get into everything you're doing now, but I really want to find out like the starting of it. How long ago did you start Archetype?
So Archetype came around about February of 2010, and I co-founded it with my old business partner, Jesper Torres. And it was myself, Eddie Gutierrez, and Alan. I don't remember Alan's last name, as our apprentices. So it's been 13 years now.
That is so crazy.
Yeah, and it grew and grew and grew. Carlos, our connection, the one that's. Did you ever get tattooed by Carlos?
Oh yeah, so all of my ink, except for my Batman up here,
Okay.
all of my ink is done by Carlos.
Hell yeah, very cool. Well,
And then I have my unfinished Ninja Turtles on my ankle that I'm going to get done by him.
Nice.
I had it started somewhere else. So I was like, we're going to get it finished here.
oh, he's the perfect one to do it for.
Yes.
So then you've been tattooed at Archetype too. So
Yes.
I mean, at the old location as well.
No, just the one off of Manal and
University.
University. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, before we were on Lomas and Adams Street, we had a 5,000 square foot, huge, massive complex. It was like the archives. It used to be an old meat market. So it was like old refrigerated, super insulated, super dark. We had the catacombs of tattoo booths and such. And that was great. We grew to like 13 artists, but it was way too huge. And too many artists, too many personalities to deal with. So yeah, we moved to the Manal location back in 2017.
Okay.
And that's I bought my partner out and took the solid crew, and Carlos was one of them. And came over.
That's crazy. So when in 2017, because that's like exactly when I started getting tattooed by Carlos.
Oh, I think like we moved in there June, maybe, or early in the year.
That's crazy. I think my first tattoo was done by him in November. No, that's not true, actually, because I had done it in a year later, in 2018. So about a year after you guys started is when I started getting tattooed by Carlos. That's crazy.
Yeah, so we just got
Are you born and raised here in Albuquerque?
No. I'm a military brat, so I don't have a hometown. Moved around constantly. Growing up, I think between the ages of 0 and 18, I moved 9 times.
Wow.
I did a little bit overseas. We were in Germany stationed for a while, but a lot of different locations. Surprisingly, we were stationed in New Mexico at one point. I went to like my 10th grade in Alamogordo, New Mexico.
Okay.
Horrible. Horrible memories there. But no, we moved around a lot. Started tattooing in California, but then moved out to Albuquerque in 2004, and then have lived here since now. So that's, good chunk, almost half my life. So I do love Albuquerque. This is
awesome.
like what I consider now my town. My wife and children are obviously, my wife's from here. My children are born and raised here. So
What landed you here in New Mexico?
well,
Back in New Mexico, I guess.
Sure. Well, my parents retired. My stepdad retired from the military and then bought a home in Tijeras. So, holidays, come out and visit the fam. Loved the mountains. The tattoo culture even back then was even more accepted in California. Right?
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, out here it's wild, man. Tattoos are super accepted. It's like, I don't know, something in the culture. It's really, really, it's cool to be heavily tattooed. And I felt even back then. And when I had gone through like kind of a little, early quarter life crisis, ended up leaving the shop I was at in California. Found myself in a Buddhist monastery in Bergerac, France, actually.
Holy shit.
Yeah, meditating with Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. And I found myself back to...
And how old were you at that point?
24.
In France? You're 24 in France at a Buddhist monastery.
Yeah.
How long did you stay there for?
I was only there solid for a month.
That's still crazy. How did you find yourself out there?
Well, I went through kind of an interesting change in life early on, my 20s, where 100% disclosure, man, I had a problem with crystal meth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Started my career off partying too hard. That's one thing about the tattoo industry, especially back then. It's really easy to get a hold of whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
And live the lifestyle you want to live. And I did I enjoyed it a little too much. And, you know, there's a point where, if you ever talk to anybody who's ever dealt with that horrible fucking drug.
Yeah, one of my best friends, we did a 3-hour podcast all about that.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
Then there's archives about this information, how difficult it can be on you in your life and how difficult it can be to get away from it.
Yeah.
But thankfully, tattooing did give me motivation and gave me something beyond that. And I went through like a full-on 360. Like I got up to like 200, almost 50 pounds, man, of like, because I quit doing dope and so you start drinking and eating and blew up, and then life just switched, man, and I started studying Buddhism, meditating, reading, basically detoxed everything. When all my partying went away, so all my friends.
Funny how that happens, right?
Yeah. So I found I just had the opportunity. There was an opportunity to go to a period where they allow non-monastics, non-monks and nuns to come and stay at their monastery for up to a month, and just found my way out there, man, and got to spend the time with meditate and got to conversate and collaborate with all sorts of monastics and learned.
I'm proud to announce that the podcast is now officially sponsored by the fine people over at Chop Chili Company. Guys, this is some of the best chili you can get here in the state of New Mexico, and they are online as well as in stores. They can be found at Smith's, Albertsons, Sprouts, John Brooks, and Lowe's Corner Market. They have 3 amazing flavors that you see here, and they also have frozen green chili that you can get online. Go on over to the website, chopchilico.com, and get yourself some amazing chili today.
A lot about myself.
That's a hell of an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that tends to be, sadly, like a through line for a lot of like creatives, especially in the beginning of their career, whether it's tattooing, whether it's they're in music, comedy, acting, anything that is relatively abstract, in comes a lot of extracurriculars.
Sure.
And now when you're, to flash forward a little bit, now that you're so heavy on social media and you're putting out so much content and like everything from like, I love the fact, and I definitely get into this because you're obviously a very fit individual. I love the fact that you talk about exercises for tattoo artists. I think that's awesome. Because if you're spending, 8 to 12 hours, 16 hours a day hunched over doing that number, that's going to kill your back. That's carpal tunnel waiting to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So the amount of content that you put out, do you find yourself putting out content of like, hey, like if you're starting in tattooing, here's some things to stay away from. Here's some, like you put out a video about how do you run a good tattoo shop, right? So to extrapolate from that, it's like, here's how to find a good tattoo shop. Here's a good apprenticeship program. Do you find yourself making content and making videos about like, hey, here's generally how to start your tattoo career. Here's some things to look out for. Here's some things, both good and bad.
Sure. Well, to kind of back that up a little bit, tattooing is coming out of an age of extreme gatekeeping, meaning, back in the day, tattooing was very competitive, like very competitive. I started tattooing in 2000, which was kind of at the cusp before the Miami Ink era started the whole television series. So the only way you could get into tattooing back then was if you were related to somebody or tied in somehow through some sort of friendship. There was no, we had the internet, but it was dial-up, man. There was no online sales and shit. So it was very difficult to become a tattoo artist, and it was for good reason because there wasn't very many tattoo artists.
Right.
And back then, tattoo artists, they made all their own tattoo machines. They mixed their own inks. They made their needles and soldered them together, right?
That's crazy.
It was a craft, and there was very few people not as many people collecting tattoos.
Right.
So it was very much guarded secrets. And then you had this explosion in 2004 when, the subculture or culture started to accept tattooing more and more. We found them on some celebrities and some actors, and then boom, Miami Ink back in 2004 hits, and then it's like every demographic starts running to tattoo shops. Now they can see the amazing work we can do. That's not just all hearts and moms and skulls and daggers, right?
Right.
We can do portraits and stuff like that. And so then we have this weird divide of now like massive amounts of waves of people wanting to get into the industry, slamming up against a wall or a gate of old school mentality of like, well, you can't come in. You can't come in here. And then you throw in the capability of the online sales and internet and, capitalism, right? And now these supply companies, these manufacturers are just like, well, okay, well, we're going to put our shit online. And so you have this just a ton of people buying equipment, starting to tattoo without any training, pissing off the old schoolers still, and you just get this massive more and more divide between the older and younger generation, and it has not stopped. It's only gotten more and more intense, especially now that, when we talk about content, man, you can go online and YouTube how to tattoo, and I mean, there's just so much information. There's other outside entities, other folks outside of tattooing that are taking upon themselves to create tattoo schools, right? And, pumping people through these 3-month-long courses, charging them 15 grand and pumping them out, basically making them watch videos, tattoo on practice skin and saying, good luck, you're a professional tattoo artist,
Yeah.
And how that ties together is there's not any information where we're really like saying, hey, I know you want to get into tattooing, and I know you bumped up against this old school mentality of basically F off. And I want to try and help you get into tattooing more efficiently and safely and professionally for the future of tattooing. And it's not like the old generation is saying F off because not all of them want to totally turn everyone away. That was the initial way you earned your spot, right? You when I first started to get an apprentice, you walk in and like, I'd like to become an apprentice. Like, no. Okay, it's to test your mettle, right? To test you to keep coming in and being persistent and persistent to try and get in. Newer generation, that doesn't make sense, right? And with the evolution of technology and just the evolution of humans right now, there's too many options, right? There's too many options to, well, if I can't get an apprenticeship here, then I'll just go over here and ask, and if I go there, I'll find a school, right? And
Right.
so you have everyone kind of getting into the industry nowadays in just a whole plethora and myriad of ways that's inconsistent. Inconsistent and leading to things like, talk about people not learning how to sit properly, and, because they never sat with a mentor, they never learned how to get appropriate ergonomic furniture, right? So they're not leaning over,
Yeah.
how to like know how to stop every hour, stretch, and know how to like look away and focus on something else for a little bit before you go back to a tattoo. Learning basic stretching or exercises to strengthen the parts of your body that are going to get a lot of wear and tear. They're not getting that information, at least not in a wide variety. And a whole gambit, not know how to pay their taxes, not knowing how to manage a business, not know how to do. I mean, burnout is a real issue. It just continues to create more conflict and disharmony in our industry. And what that has led to is some issues like what we kind of talked about right before about regulations in Europe, or regulations in general. So the government, being that whether it's state or federal, have haven't had an organization or an industry to go talk to. They've been, well, if you guys aren't going to communicate and come together and cooperate, well, then we'll start imposing regulations on you.
Well, you got to also think that the government is largely made up of people that are still of the generation of, well, tattoos are for degenerates, tattoos are for rejects, tattoos are for the military community and the prison community. And no matter how accepted they are, especially like in a place like New Mexico, where everyone here is tattooed.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I would honestly, is it safe to say like 80% of the populace here is tattooed?
I feel so, and not just tattooed, but like heavily tattooed.
Right. So it's just, you talk about the government's supposed to represent the people that they're over. You look at our own government, and it's like, well, not a lot of them. And I'm saying that every government official has tattoos, but just as a case, as a case study, like not a lot of them have tattoos. A lot of them speak out about tattoos. A lot of them, and any government officials that do have them, you'd never know. Yeah. You would absolutely never know because of that stigma that's still in government. So when they see something like this, like, well, like I was watching one of your videos where they're saying, well, they're regulating tattoos down to maybe this was in Europe, but down to like the cosmetic level, but then like they weren't even letting them represent themselves as a part of that like subdivision.
So yeah, I mean, there's man, we could spend a lot of time on just every single state regulates tattooing differently, and then even countries are different. And what you're probably referring to is, I mean, there's some spaces like in Georgia and Oklahoma right now where they're almost like discriminating against tattoo artists. New Jersey was another spot.
I saw the video about that too.
Yeah, where they're only allowing one tattoo artist to be involved with their regulatory board. So essentially, they're keeping it very minimal on who gets to put in information.
Yeah.
But then again, kind of building off of that, go to Oklahoma right now, where they're trying to impose where they can't open a tattoo shop within 1,000 feet of a school or church, or essentially anywhere where there's children, like as if there's some sort of crazy, like gonna go out and steal kids or something. They also have to pay some sort of crazy $100,000 surety bond per artist for liability purposes. Oh my God. And then they have to even put out a like if they want to open a shop or renew their license, they have to put it in a newspaper so everyone can read it and give it basically 3 weeks for people to detest it or to contest it. You know, like, oh, I don't want them to open a shop. And yeah, it's like, what? And then you go to Georgia, man, they're still regulating them like they're still zoned as adult entertainment, keeping them to they're only allowed in the like the warehouse district, you know what I mean? So some parts of the country are nuts. Jeez. And then once you start getting over to Europe, and you know we can dig into that too. I mean, yes, there's a lot of issues with government. There's a lot of old heads. There's a lot of young heads too. Don't get me wrong. Like it's changing and it's changing quickly. I mean, everything's changing very quickly. And I imagine in our lifetime we're gonna see, you know, more tattoo people. I'll say this, and I can't say exactly who, but I got tattoos in the White House, bro. They're there. I have tattoo people in there, so they exist, and the paradigm is shifting. But we are definitely still kind of coming out of this old way of being and thinking. But it's going to take the industry to really truly change the paradigm. And because a lot of this is being allowed to happen, and a lot of this bullshit is happening because we as an industry aren't uniting and protecting and voicing ourselves.
So with the younger people coming in, I'm interested about that because I am not against selling tattooing material and products, like everything from the machines to the needles and stuff online. I think that's a necessity, obviously, in today's world. But I know a lot of people that are against unlicensed tattoo artists being able to buy their own equipment and doing stuff out of their house. And until watching your stuff, I had no idea that was even. It makes complete sense that was illegal, mm-hmm. right? I had no idea that was illegal, doing tattoos in your house, unregulated, and like that. Sure. And I think a lot of people that aren't. Whether they're not knowledgeable about how a tattoo shop actually works, or they've never stepped in one, or they choose not to learn. Wherever they fall on that spectrum, they still kind of see tattooing as like this like dirty, grungy. It's like a subsect of art, but it's like the emo, like the black haired and like, you know, very like dark side of art. And I'll be honest, I'd never went to a tattoo shop before you guys, and I was like, well, I got recommended to go here, so I'm going to go here. I hope it's a cool place. No one ever told me what to expect. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let's see what's there. And I go in, I was like, this place is like a fucking hospital. Like, I can smell how clean it is in here. Mm-hmm. That's insane. I think that's something a lot of people don't really get, is how sanitary mm-hmm. tattoo shops have to be, not how sanitary they can be or how much they should be, how much they have to be. Sure. Not only to meet regulations, but that's just the more you peel back that onion. I don't think people take the time to critically think about the subject. Or it's like, well, yeah, it's not just a tattoo. It's not just an instrument that you're using to draw on somebody. No, you're injecting dye into somebody's skin. Okay, how are you doing that? What does that take? It's a needle. Oh, why does a tattoo hurt so much afterwards? Why do you have to keep applying stuff like Aquaphor on it? It's an open wound.
It's a flesh wound, yeah.
It's a wound. You're wounding somebody to create art. Therefore, there's bloodborne pathogens mm-hmm. involved. There's bloodborne safety involved. You have to do this, do that. And like my first tattoo, my Batman that I got done, it was done by my buddy's family friend in his upstairs bedroom that he had like circumvented into a studio. And up until when I was watching your videos, like, oh shit, that wasn't the most legal thing I've ever done in my life. Look at that.
I mean, I'm not gonna hate on it. Yeah. We've all done it. And
yeah, but it's just the more that tattooing goes into the mainstream, and the more it's accepted, people I think will be able to open their eyes. It's like, no, 90% of people that are getting their tattoos are getting it done in professional shop where it's regulated, they're licensed, they have to do stuff like renew their licensing. I'm sure the health board is on your guys' ass, like all this type of stuff that keeps you up and running. So with the newer, I guess, class of tattooers coming in, I guess you could say, something interesting you brought up was there's people starting these online courses about, hey, pay 15 grand, we'll sit you in front of some videos. 3 months later, you're a pro tattoo artist. Do you feel like the newer class of tattoo artists these days are getting sold like only the bright side of tattooing? It's like, yeah, you get to make your own schedule. You get to draw all day. You just get to make art. You make people happy. It's such a unique profession. You're so professional once you're done, but they don't show like the uglier side of it. It's like you're working 18 hours a day in and out of shop. Yeah. You have to learn how do you, but not teach them like how do you sit properly, how do you posture, stretching, all that type of stuff. Do you feel like that's happening? They're kind of getting the sunshine and rainbows part of it.
I mean, I think this could go into a lot of different professions, but yeah, if you don't go through some sort of apprenticeship, right? That's the most efficient way to become a tattoo artist. And during an apprenticeship could last upwards to 2 to 5 years. I mean, it depends on you, honestly, sometimes faster. But that's where you get to see the day-to-day, right? You know, like the glamour on television, the newer class, the younger generation. And it's funny you say it because I have a couple of tattoo artists, and one, she's just now tattooing. She's 22, 23, and she talks about, I grew up watching Ink Master, and I wanted to be one of those. Like, God damn, I'm older than you've been, I've been tattooing long as you've been alive. And it is like, oh, it's a rock star. Oh, you're on television. Oh, you're.
I mean, I'd be lying if I said I haven't gone down the YouTube rabbit hole of the top 10 best Ink Master or whatever. I love those videos.
Well, and I mean, there's cool because it's tattooing and there's art. I mean, they definitely over dramatize it. Little background. I mean, it is not real, right? A lot of it, I mean,
it's a reality show.
Yeah, it's bullshit, right? It's a lot of coaching, a lot of fake drama, a lot of switching things around to make it seem more extra. And so when people see that, and then, oh, I could take a class, or oh, I could buy equipment, and oh, I could work in a shop and just draw all day and dress however I want and get tattoos on my neck and my face. Yeah, it may attract people to it, and then they realize reality once they get there, right? You're right. I mean, it's hours and hours of work. Dealing with people I think that's one of the biggest elements that folks don't snap is like your canvas is a human. So you got to be good with people, right? You got to like people. You got to like to engage with them and take them through a scary process and be able to navigate all of those elements. And sometimes, if you haven't been taught very well how to deal with people, it will put you in a bad position physically, emotionally, because there's vampires out there, man. Like some are draining as all hell too, because they want their artwork done a specific way. And I mean, there's just so many elements that are definitely starting to come out. People are starting to share, but those are most of the things that you would learn in an apprenticeship, right? You would be there with a mentor, watching them deal with these things, so that way you had them in your mental library to eventually navigate in the future. And I mean, there's a huge amount of burnout and low retention in the industry too. I mean, a lot of people are flocking to it. A lot of people leave it too because it's like, oh, this shit's hard. It's not easy. I'm a good artist, but when you stick a needle to skin, it's nothing like drawing on paper. Right?
Yeah, I would imagine so.
And then
the paper can't yell back at you, "Hey, motherfucker!"
Oh yeah, or it's squishy and it's stretchy and it bleeds and it's tattooing itself is a craft, and it is a technical. I don't like to say surgical, but it's definitely a technical process of creating an optimally attractive wound, right?
Yeah.
That in itself is an entirety. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to be creative and, like you have to insert the needle at a specific angle and a certain depth, right? You have to have a certain level of tautness on the skin as you're applying that needle to the skin. You can only put so much pigment on the skin at a time. Like it's very technical.
Yeah.
The art side is one side and the tattooing is another. And those are just to do the job. That's not dealing with the person, right? And then deal with your marketing, deal with your taxes, deal with your, I mean, it's, and again, this new generation is just not getting this information, at least not in a holistic package like they used to in an apprenticeship. And so people are trying to offer up substitutes, right, and trying to profit off of them. And I personally feel called because I care about tattooing. I care about the future of it because no matter what, humans have been marking their flesh since before written history. I mean, we have proof that it's gone beyond. Even that Otzi, the iceberg, the peat bog mummy from 5400 BC, they're finding tattoos before that, right? And it's going to be here way past us. The question is what is it going to look like, you know? And it was, throughout ages, it was always like a sign of prestige and rites of passage, and had so much like meaning to it. Sometimes negative, but a lot of times positive. Yeah. And then we're just experiencing this negative shift in the past century, where it honestly stems. I personally believe, and we could get into cultural beliefs, but when it came to America, because it was royalty collecting tattoos back then, man. Back the late 1800s. I mean, you have kings and princes and like royalty collecting work. And then it came to America, and there was this transition when the electric tattoo machine came out, where then you started to see it was easier to get done. More people were collecting them. Hey, the wealthy elite have it. I want it too, right? So then everyone starts collecting these tattoos. And then you see them a lot of military, and then you saw them, like another big element is you saw them on heavily tattooed women. And during, like, there's, I'd have to find my old history books about some of these heavily tattooed women that would do like these burlesque shows, right? And this was during a time when women were subjected to almost servitude, right? And they were less than a man, right? But then you had these women who were scantily dressed, heavily tattooed, making a good living, right? Defying the male norms and shit. I mean, that was like, I believe, in a perception, like a beginning of the women's rights, right? So then it's like, oh, we don't like that. And then you have these veterans coming back from World War I, World War II, tattooed with PTSD, right? Starting in the initial, like, bike gangs started from the majority of our veterans from war, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like a collective, like, oh, these thugs, but then we feel kind of self-conscious as a society that we don't know how to deal with our veterans, so we just kind of,
right. We sent them off to do rough shit. Now they're coming back and they still want to do rough shit.
Yeah,
what do we do about that? Right.
So in other words, like, just the tattoos commingled with those kind of demographics for a period of time, and I'm overgeneralizing. There's probably a lot more details in there, but it kind of delved, like, it's like this tattooing is this ancient wise craft, and that kind of gets into this lull. But now we're kind of coming back out of it, and like I said, now everyone and their brother and sister are collecting tattoos. Albuquerque is and New Mexico is a great example of how you can go to the bank, right? And your banker will have like a tattoo poking out of their their collar because they got their neck tattooed. So we're in this weird, crazy growing pains where back when the tattoos were kind of subculture-y, and then through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were still subculture, but they were tattoo conventions were coming along. Lyle Tuttle was the late Lyle Tuttle. He was an amazing dude. He was the first ink master because he tattooed Janis Joplin on a television show.
Oh wow!
Oh bro, yeah, no gloves, anything, just on television.
It's a whole still.
Yeah. And there was the beginning of tattoo magazines and conventions, and it started grow more popular. Jack Rudy, Brian Everett, Charlie Cartwright, Freddie Grady, these guys started like really blowing up the art scene and the convention circuits, and it became more and more popular. And so it's like I said, all things went from like slowly evolving to now everything's evolving fastly. Not just tattooing, every aspect, technology, everything. And so we're in this like crazy growing pain of like tattoos went from guarded to now accepted, but we as humans haven't evolved fast enough. And it's like technology is growing faster than we can, so is the acceptance. So I feel called, and in conjunction with others who feel called in the industry. I'm solo, right? A lot of the information you see I'm putting out is from people that are asking. Like,
it's very collaborative what you're doing.
Yeah. We feel called to guide tattooing to a better future, and mostly doing that through the Alliance of Professional Tattooists. This is our trade organization that's been around since the 90s, but again, the foundational members in the 90s were old school, and they still made machines and needles and ink and would grind 10 hours a day and shit, and didn't keep up with technology, didn't keep up with the kids, right?
Yeah.
And anytime tattooers deal with anything regulatory-wise or licensing, they're immediately labeled the police and kind of, like a leper, right?
Yeah.
So the APT kind of disappeared from the industry's awareness. Never went away. Still there, still working, still helping where they could, when they could, but definitely dwindled down to a very small amount. And this new federal law that's affecting us, there's a new law that's actually, we talked about what's going on in Europe. There's the same thing here now in America. It started back in December 29, 2022. And it has reinvigorated the alliance because no matter what, it kept its 501c6 nonprofit status up to date and current. Right? The government still recognizes us.
So just in case we need it, we're going to be here. Yeah.
And with that, they're allowing us in a lot of conversations. In that the alliance is being a part of a lot of what's going to happen to all of our supplies moving forward.
So what does that new regulation look like right now? Has it? Well, yeah. What does it actually say? And then what stage is it at right now? Moving through the wheels of government.
Yeah, good question. So it was a proposed bill up to December 29, 2022, which was now signed into law. So it's called the Modernization of Cosmetic Regulation Act, and it affects all of cosmetics.
So it's signed into law right now.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Since the end of 22.
Okay.
Now this affects all of cosmetics. It's anything that can be sprinkled, sprayed, rubbed, applied. It does say injected. We do prefer the word inserted when it comes to tattooing because there's no hollow tube.
Right.
But anything for the purpose of beautification is a cosmetic. So tattooing is a cosmetic in America.
Right.
And so we are now going to be under FDA scrutiny on all of our products. Now, as a practitioner, I'm not 100% terrified of safe disubstantiation and good manufacturing processes and ingredients lists and recall framework, right? Like these things are good, like especially if we're using products that we're putting on in our clients.
Right.
The problem is because the industry didn't get very involved or provide a bunch of scientific data, we kind of kept a lot of it to ourselves because we were making these things ourselves, right? They don't have a lot of guidelines to go off of, so they're kind of like, well, we don't have any information. Like, where else should we look? And the scary thing about our law here in America, the MOCRA, is it does state we can utilize, the FDA or the Secretary of Human Health Services could utilize European standards. And, you said, before you were talking about kind of the scary things going on in Europe. Well, what does that look like? So what happened in Europe was called the REACH regulations, REACH, restriction, evaluation, authorization, and restriction of chemicals, registration. Yeah. And it was very similar to America. They had this law come along, so like we want to start regulating tattoo inks better, right? You have millions and millions of people collecting tattoos. There's not a lot of regulations on it. We're going to start regulating it. Okay, tattoo industry, give us some feedback. Crickets chirping. Crickets chirping. Okay, we need some feedback or we're going to start creating laws. Crickets chirping. Crickets chirping. Okay, well then we're going to look at the European Chemical Association and break down all of the tattoo inks and take these individual chemicals that are in tattoo inks and incorrectly regulate each one by like not having any sort of scientific data that applies them to tattooing, but actually look at them in totally non-subjective situations and create guidelines off of that. So they're essentially believing that you've been tattooed. This is the easiest way I can explain it, is if you had an ink cap, right? We put a little plastic cap, we fill it with ink, and then, the tattoo dips into it, and then tattoos it in your skin, right? We're inserting it in the dermis. There's a lot on the surface, a lot is wiped off, right? A lot of it isn't really going in, right? Probably, as a tattooist, maybe 5% of that ink cap is actually going to be in your body.
Wow. I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot wasted.
Holy shit.
But they're basing their scientific data as if you took a syringe and stuck it in your vein in your body. So they're like, oh, you can only have a fraction of that ingredient in your body for it to be compliant.
Oh, man.
So now they've created these guidelines for the inks in Europe that are so subpar that they've removed 4,000 of the ingredients and 2 of the main colors, blue and green, and now mandating them to use products that are subpar and then supplementing different ingredients because they're trying to like, well, this ingredient's fine at that level. It's watered down crap. Majority of tattoo artists don't use it, right? They're actually having, those who are using, having recalls because they're putting now chemicals and different shit in people's body they didn't never use before.
And now we're not going to get real case data about that until the reactions happen.
They're already happening in Germany.
Yeah.
And so what this does is many of the tattoo artists aren't using it, but they're using the tattoo inks that we use here. And you know, they're like, we're using the compliance stuff. They put it out, but then they're really reaching in their box and pulling out the the stuff that we're using in America. If they're caught using that, up to 3 years in prison and a €50,000 fine.
Jesus Christ.
And so what happened? Why did that happen? Is because the government was like, hey, tattoo artists, you didn't give us any information, so we just created these laws. So we created these regulations. We went through this thing. Now the European artists are like, why did this happen? No, like, this sucks. I have an interview coming out with some German artists. They're like, yeah, we should have done something. But they didn't believe anything was going to happen.
Right.
It was like, oh, nothing happened. Government does nothing. And now they're basically...
They're like, oh, fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Government's doing something about it.
And so not the exact same thing, but a very similar thing happens here. The difference is it happened in December. We started working in January. We've been grinding to the point where we've been taking initiatives. We're involved with different groups like the Association of Food and Drug Officials Body Art Committee. And I'm the chairman of the APT, Alliance of Professional Tattooists Pigment Committee, where we're dealing with different expert panelists. I'm talking about like biochemists, dermatologists, of course, general practitioners, registered nurse. We have different academics from the University of New York, University of Texas, University of South Dakota. Like, we are working to provide that data that they need.
Yeah. Well, 'cause I was going to ask, like, so when this got passed in America, did they reach out to any sort of into the APT? Did they reach out to any organization say, hey, can we get data from you guys? Or are they just like, nah, we're going to make laws?
It's government. And well, I'll tell you this, man, it was a massive bill, right? This bill that passed, I think, had like 998 pages. And the MOCA,
Congress read none of it, because why would they?
Yeah, right. Somebody squeezed it in somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And it was in the back of it, right? So honestly, through the AFTO committee, we get to engage with FDA and ex-FDA. And they were saying that when this law passed, they didn't even know. The FDA didn't even know, right? I would say that myself and Sean Anderson, the president of the Alliance of Professional Tattooists, and a few others were already alerted working before the FDA was, right? And now, in hindsight, we've talked to the head of the FDA task force. She is already saying, like, she's saying, hey, you guys need to help us, because they see what's going on in Europe. Yeah. They were at the last, there's things called the World Congress of Tattoo and Pigment Research, where they were talking about it. These REACH products are not safe, but that's what they have. So if FDA is like, well, we don't want that shit.
Yeah. So
they're looking at us going like, well, hey, we see that you guys are doing shit. Let's work together. And I don't want to say work together because it's government, man. What it is, this is the FDA, specifically this task force, is understaffed, underpaid, and underknowledgeable. So they're willing to, like, hey, give us some information, or we'll use REACH. We'll use yours, though, too, if you work with us. So we have been vigorously, working on the back end to provide this data, so that way they can make appropriate rules based off of that statute, right? And, when a law is passed, it creates a statute. A statute is like a framework, right? From there, it's vague. They have to then, over a series of a year to 2 years, create rules based off of those statutes, which will create regulations. So we're going to give them information so they can make rules that make sense. Right?
Yeah, that's good. And I just, especially over the last 3 to 4 years, but just in general in my life, I've been very critical and very just like side-eye about the government.
Oh, man.
And when I hear about, well, we're just going to make a law and not really ask anybody about it, and it's like, well, A, that's not surprising, and B, it's like, well, when you start doing regulation on your own and you're involved with 3-letter agencies, I would just love to be able to sit down for 5 hours and follow the money. Like, where's all this going? Who's supplying the new...
I got my theories.
Oh, yeah. It's like, who's supplying the new ingredients? And, like, why is that being pushed so hard? because I mean, obviously we've seen the government has a huge history of just pushing things on their own that they want everyone to take for one reason or another. And so seeing things that are happening over in Europe as an average listener of this episode, right? Would they be able to sit down and see like, okay, here is where the European government asked for information. Here's what they asked for data. Is there actual documentation of that? Or is it just kind of government officials coming out saying, hey, we asked them, they didn't say anything, so now here we are.
Oh, yeah.
Are there receipts of this?
Yeah, so I mentioned the Association of Food and Drug Officials. So this came about 10 years ago, and they've had a body art committee. It was very scarce, and basically it was mostly inspectors, mostly regulators, and then they would invite body artists, subject matter experts to come in and help. So when this was happening in Europe, no, they brought some of the tattoo industry to the table.
Was it an actual hearing, or was it like we're gonna placate them, we're gonna let them sit and make them feel like they're important, but we're not gonna do anything about it?
Well, no, I mean,
I know all you can do is speculate, but
well, so I mean, through my experience in engaging with those who were basically there, right?
yeah,
Again, go back to that, and I'm not. Government, yes, sucks in a lot of ways, but ultimately they have, they have their job, and sometimes they're just trying to do the best with what they got. And they were giving opportunities to some, and I'm not going to name who, but some that were really still stuck in that mindset of like, this is mine, I ain't telling you shit.
That's so sad.
And so what happened is they were like, nah, it won't happen. It will be all right. It's cool, man. And then, oh, nope. Some shit did go down.
Yeah.
And so, there's like my perspective, your perspective of what happened, right? Yes, the government did step in and eventually now has made a mistake and is creating subpar products, but it was ultimately from a lack of cooperation between the industry and the product industry, the manufacturing industry, and the European government.
I never want to be that guy that just shits on government and says government's all bad. They're all, because at the end of the day, no matter how much I love talking shit about them, they're humans.
Sure.
At the end of the day, they're humans.
Yeah.
And obviously the levels of corruption are varied, but at the end of the day, they're humans. And I believe that most of them, I'd say 90% of them, go into it with good intentions.
Sure.
And then, the system works on them, things happen, and so on and so forth. We've seen House of Cards. But, these things happen. But I never want to be the guy that just completely, talks down about an organization or a group of people that are doing wrong things, especially when if there is evidence and they're clearly like, hey, we don't know anything about this, we're going to bring in SMEs like you were talking about. We're going to sit down with some people. If you guys are going to keep your own information from us, we're going to go off of what we have. Because you can't blame them at that point.
Yeah.
Then that's your own fucking fault.
It is.
That is your own fault. And so we were talking about they're using these subpar ingredients and these subpar products in Europe. What types of reactions, physical reactions to the product are people having? Is there any illnesses happening?
It's more like allergic reactions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like weird skin reaction. I mean, personally, I haven't seen any because I'm not in Europe. I haven't experienced that.
I've never had a bad reaction from Archetype Tattoo. Ever. Because they are clean as fuck.
Dude, regardless of how clean, sometimes it's people have latex allergies, or sometimes they're just super sensitive skin. But no, they're just having. No one's like dying or losing an appendage yet. They're just having weird reactions to some of these new ingredients. And there's actually a online source called Rapex, RAPEX, and that's where you can look this shit up and actually see what they're happening and what's going on with it. I've seen a picture where it looked like a massive hive reaction.
Okay.
Again, but because these ingredients are new, they're not like the ingredients they've been using for decades.
Yeah.
It's these new, so it's like, I had this reaction. What's it gonna be like in 10 years?
Right. Exactly. You don't actually have the data to say what's going to happen. And frankly, since tattooing's been around for so long, I've never had a bad reaction. The only time I've ever had an issue with the tattoo is because I screwed up and didn't take care of it properly.
Sure.
And you can tell now because on my little daredevil right here, there's a patch of skin that's showing because I fucked that up and I was picking at it because I was stupid, and then things happen. But other than that, I've gotten tattoos without issue. and people expect that, right? Especially if you get referred to a tattoo shop by someone that's heavily tattooed, you have the expectation of, well, I'm going to get taken care of. I'm going to have the same product. I'm going to have the same outcome as the person who recommended me. So if you're over in Europe for some reason, or if you live there, you're vacationing, and you get a tattoo over there, and you have let's say you're American vacationing, and you have the expectation of American quality, and now you get hives, and now you get some issues. I mean, this is I feel like the reason I bring this up is like this affects more than just the people in that region.
Oh yeah,
because people travel specifically for tattoos.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about social media right now is these tattoo artists that are extremely talented, could put their stuff out there, and people will travel to get art done by somebody.
Oh yeah,
it happens all the time.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. No, we're human beings, man. We're all interconnected, and so even just going back to the person tattooing in their house, right? You know, that affects us professionals, right? Because that puts a negative stigma on tattooing. That affects perception. That perception overlaps on us professionals. And then, here in New Mexico, it's wild, man. If you tattoo at home illegally, the government can't do nothing. It's outside of their jurisdiction. If you tattoo professionally and have a shop, they can come fine you and come inspect you.
Wait, what?
Oh, dude, it's government. Yeah, you know, we could get into the
that makes zero sense to me. Okay, so if you own tattoo equipment and you decide you are gonna start tattooing out of your house, okay, so does it make a difference if you're charging people money or not? Does that make a difference?
In other words, there's no ability right now. There's no law that's put in place that we can like send people to your house, right? Like it's outside of jurisdiction for a state regulatory board. Right?
And I'm always for less regulation in general, just because I don't trust government very much. But I do see the obvious risk in tattooing from your home, because you were talking about in that video where it's like just because you don't see bacteria, because you don't see pathogens around you, that does not mean they exist or don't exist, rather. And what happens because for anyone listening that's never been in a tattoo shop, obviously like everything in that space where you're getting tattooed is at least in my experience, it's been completely saran wrapped off with fresh saran wrap, so you're never touching a old surface again, because I never really thought of a tattoo as an open wound until like 2 years ago personally, but it's an open wound, so Lord forbid you have this brand new, especially like a forearm, you don't really think about it too much, and just boom, what just got in there?
Yeah, man. The first real thorough bloodborne pathogens course I went to, I left like straight, like people in COVID all like, oh man, there's bacteria everywhere. But no, I am 100%, man. I'm not about regulation either, and I don't want to impose some sort of regulation to go to people's houses. What I'm about, and this kind of goes back to the beginning, man, of putting out content, educating people. Like, I want to teach people, like, hey, man, yeah, sure, you can go to someone's house, but there is definitely a potential there could be, X, Y problems, and that you have those of us who've been spending years and years training, have taken every, precaution to safeguard your health exists too. So make an educated decision. We don't need more government regulation. We need more self-regulation.
Right.
And that's the purpose of creating content, is just to educate people, make them more aware, and share information that people wouldn't share before. I'm not going to teach anyone how to tattoo online, right?
Yeah.
You know, the best way to learn how to tattoo is with a mentor. But there is stuff that can be taught on a massive scale, like needs to be taught, like the history of tattooing, microbiology and physiology. Like you said, you didn't know it was a flesh wound. People need to know that we're penetrating the epidermis, inserting pigment into the dermal layer, creating a flesh wound, right? Like people need to know this information. They need to know eventually that a tattoo, like the one about how to open a tattoo shop. That tattoo shops are hard. You know, it's not just tattooing and having fun and people work for you. It's like marketing and supplies and maintenance and overhead and all that shit.
It's running a business.
It is an entirely other job, running a business and tattooing. When I started Archetype back in 2010, it damn near killed me, man, because I was still trying to tattoo at that high level of, 3 to 5 tattoos a day, 5 days a week, and run a tattoo shop and do all that shit.
That's insane.
Yeah, legitimately. Like
3 to 5 a day?
Yeah, man, I used to be crazy when I tattooed.
And for people that don't really understand how long tattoos take, like even my this small 2-color piece, this Punisher I've got on my forearm, this took 2 hours. or so. Yeah, hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, my half arm took like 3. This took another 2.5. Like,
Yeah, and Carlos is fast too.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, man. No, that's what I was just talking to a potential apprentice because they were interested in getting tattooing, and I was trying to tell them that it takes up your life. You know, when you're a busy tattoo artist, like it legitimately will take up the majority of your life and your heart, right? And it's very trying on every other aspect of your life, especially your relationships. You know, because not only are you passionate about it, but you're also spending the majority of your time doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife was talking about how she recalls when it was almost every day. Hey, hon, I'm not going to be home in time. I'm going to be home at 9 or 10, you know, even though I started at 9 or 10 in the morning, you know, like, because I got this other client. It's taking longer than I thought, you know. So, no, I mean, that's, yeah, trying to do that and run a shop, man, is just people don't know that, right? They're like, and that's the whole point, man, is just to put information out there to help people be more educated. So when they do actually find themselves sitting down and ready to like learn the craft, they're a lot more knowledgeable so they can have a more successful career. They'll do it more professionally. That'll make the industry better because it's going to perpetuate that persona that we're professionals, you know, that we, and you know, we make a huge difference in people's lives because we not only permanently mark you, but every time we do that, it's wound or it's a traumatic experience. Not too bad, but enough to where you remember them, right? Yeah. And you know who did them. Obviously, Carlos did a lot of them. But you build a bond, you build a connection, and sometimes, and I'll say quite a few over the 2+ decades of tattooed, people call you their therapist. They connect with you, and we have a lot of responsibility to make sure that we're whole, that we're solid, that we're able to not put our stress on them, but to be able to take them through this traumatic experience and be able to have time not even guide them or say anything, or listen to them, but just be there in a professional manner. And if we're fucking all over the place and stressed out and treating them like trash, you know, like that does no one no good in the long run.
How far into your tattooing career did that hit you?
I mean, the connecting with people, I mean, it was probably, I mean, I noticed that big dynamic. I had great relationships up to the 10-year mark, opened the studio, and then tried to do both and realized it was hurting my relationships with my clients because I did feel overworked, overstressed. And so, yeah, it was back in when we moved to a new location and kind of learned a lot of the mistakes for 7 years, like what not to do. That was really when it hit home. And now I enjoy the connecting with my clients sometimes more, not more than the tattoo, but pretty much, man. I enjoy getting to hang out with them and bullshit with them and get to know them more and listen to them. And it's energizing, honestly. You know?
And when did it become apparent to you that you had to have your own life in as much order as you can to be able to not only connect well, but put out a good product?
Again, that's probably
at the same time.
Yeah, around the same time because, yeah, it finally took me a little longer, you know, it was 36, 37, but kind of, you know, found some balance in life.
Yeah.
You know?
So did you go into owning and running a tattoo shop knowing all of the extra challenges it was going to bring?
Fuck no. No, man. Like I said, I walked into it.
Like the taxes and the running of it. And
I mean, I knew about taxes.
Well, right, but just like the actual like business side of it.
Nah, man. Man, it was I said it was trial by fire. I think my saving grace is I had a great crew. Like my dudes, Eddie Gutierrez was there. I mean, Carlos was there after a few years, and he was a solid guy. Aldo Gagos, you know, my old apprentice Megan, you know, like these people were there. They saw my passion and were there to help me. But man, there was times where it was, you know, tattoo just to cover the fucking rent, you know, and because I didn't know how to appropriately batch or buy bulk supplies. You know what I mean? Like I learned a lot of lessons by messing up.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did find beneficial is I did read like a motherfucker. Like I love reading business, entrepreneurial, life hack, anything hack kind of books on to kind of give you tips, techniques, ideas, concepts, leadership, right? You know, all these things to learn how to inspire and delegate. You know, like it was through these mess ups that I learned from, did research on, and corrected course. And so I feel like that, honestly, those first 5 years were rough, and then kind of got my bearing, and then realized those last 2 was when it was a lot about the structure too. My ex-partner and I weren't doing well, so it was those first few years. I mean, and I had no idea what I was getting into.
Did it feel natural? That next step of going into ownership, going into running an entire shop, like did that feel like a natural progression to you, or is that like, well, like how did that come apart?
You mean when I bought out my partner?
Well, no. So like when you first started doing Archetype, like with going from I'm a tattoo artist, I've been doing it for a long time. Okay, now I want to be a shop owner.
Sure. I mean, at the time, I had no. People used to ask me back in the day, like, when are you going to put a shop? Like, I was 6, 7 years in. I'm like, I'm never going to do that. It's hard. And then I had a kid, right? And then you're like, oh, shit. I'm just like tattooing and going to the bar and partying, and blowing all my money. And like, I need to do something else. And in a tattooer's mind, which for any tattooers that may listen to this is not the most efficient way anymore. But it was like, you tattoo, you get good, you have enough clients, enough to where you can share them. You open a shop, people use those. You have people pay your percentage while they tattoo those extra clients, and everything's happy right after sunset. That was the mentality, right? Up to that point, I mean, I've always been a little bit more up to then. I was heavy into amateur kickboxing, martial arts. I was starting to get into public speaking. Like I always found myself interested in a more go-getter kind of thing. Chase my dreams and chase my fear. Right? If I'm scared of something, I'm gonna go fucking do it. Like I'm gonna go do it anyway because it's exhilarating. Right? So when we opened Archetype. Again, even though I had no idea what I was doing, I still was like, "Fuck it, let's do this." And one of the pivotal, I think, also successful pieces, we were all about being a community-driven tattoo shop, meaning we did a lot of community events, charity through events, a lot of parties, a lot of events that raise money, a lot of tattoo based fundraisers. Actually, we did a canned food. Fundraiser back early we opened, and we raised enough canned goods for the United Methodists, and I went to go feed the homeless and actually met my wife there.
Oh, wow.
Cool. Yeah, that was cool. I met her there. And so, yeah, that was, but that just kind of constantly pushed me out into these leadership roles, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing that I started at the shop, because we grew so big, was we'd have to have, today, we have a mandatory Tuesday shop staff meeting, right? Everybody comes together, and we're going to talk about all the bullshit, clear the air, talk about all the events we got going on, really kind of nail down those details, which at the time, I mean, I don't know too many tattoo shops that did that, but it forced me to have to go and do things like Toastmasters, right? Public speaking clubs. Get up and speak in front of people a lot. Articulate yourself well. Know how to put your shit in a good structure so it's conducive and makes sense, right?
The value in that, I don't think a lot of people understand that. Yeah. Like, I'm still learning it myself doing this podcast. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the first person I ever heard say it properly in a way that it made sense to me was Jordan Peterson. As he was talking about it, and he was like, well, if you want to learn how to be, how to be deadly, it's not necessarily in your brute force. It's how well you can articulate yourself, how well you can master your mind, master your words. Because if you could have the best idea in the world, but if you have no idea how to properly explain that to anybody, regardless of their age, gender, education level, anything like that, if you can't articulate yourself properly, what's the use?
Oh, and it's such a dying craft nowadays too. This new, just the newer generation. It's not the newer generation, and those of us too are just becoming so tech bound, like connecting with people physically, making eye contact, and being able to vocalize yourself and articulate yourself well is stuff that's kind of going away because we do it more on our devices, or more, these younger generations are more comfortable in a selfie talking to a camera, and then they don't want to talk to you in person.
Right.
And I mean, just look at government. Look at any leader that's able to anyone. Get good leaders and bad leaders. They were great orators, good public speakers, able to articulate themselves well, and could say the same thing. They could say something in a way that would be so impactful and would penetrate way deeper than others, right?
Well, that's why, I was too young to really understand the policies of the administration, but that's why even the biggest critics of Barack Obama, they're like, don't like the guy. He's a damn good speaker, though.
Oh yeah, great orator. I mean,
It's like how powerful that can be to make your even your most devout critics be like, he can articulate himself very well, though.
yeah. I mean, and yeah, I think it's an age old thing that throughout time, it's those who've been able to do that have been able to move the masses. Right?
Yeah.
And I've found it invaluable with the tattoo industry now too, even more so. Being able to go and speak. I've just been speaking, but I'm actually next week flying out to Utah. I'm going to go speak to tattoo artists there about the Alliance. Following month, going to Denver, going to be speaking at the Denver Colorado Expo. Being asked to go out to Florida next year. There's other stuff lining up.
That's so kick-ass.
And
Good for you.
yeah, and I'm actually working on. It's slightly tattoo related. It's more about human and connections. But I'm looking at this speaking thing. We're going to be going to India at the end of the year and actually speaking at an ashram in front of, I guess, like 700,000 people.
Oh my God.
So that'll be
Holy shit.
fun.
Well, because I've always been curious. The most people I've ever spoken in front of is like maybe like 200. And that was back in college, addressing the entire school and like the administration and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But recently it's been like maybe 20 people doing stand-up. You know what I mean? Like not a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I always wonder, like you see people go out in front of arenas or they go out in these stadiums. Like how many people does it they stop being people and they're just like a body, like a mass.
Oh, yeah.
700,000 people.
Yeah, there's this annual celebration of I couldn't pronounce his name, and I don't even try, but he was one of Gandhi's right-hand men. And there's like this annual celebration of his birth and death. And long story short, there's like this celebration of humanity. And yeah, no, the team that's taking me out there, they have like a drone and they show you like. I was like, well, after the first 1,000, you're like, I don't know. There's just a waves of people over there.
Holy cow! Like you've seen the video where it's in the '90s where Metallica's playing in Russia to over 1 million people.
Oh yeah,
that is so crazy.
I mean, because I am drawn to the public speaking thing, man. Like I'm really excited to see what that feels like.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. That's fucking crazy. So anyway, going back to you owning the shop. Yeah. So you go into it, you're learning, and then obviously you don't have to air out all the personal details of it. What was the transition like going from partnership to single ownership?
Oh, it was oh, good. I don't know how to say this nicely. It was exhilarating. It was enlightening. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, obviously the subject matter surrounding that instance, obviously it wasn't the best of times, and obviously there was a lot of ugly conversations that happened. But like personally, for yourself, going from okay, I have to not only go from a dual ownership, a co-partnership. Now you're moving into a smaller space. You had to, again, for lack of a better term, you have to downsize on artists. Mm-hmm. So that takes a leader to do that. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like in that moment you were prepared to make those decisions? Was it learning, like you're saying, trial by fire, mixture of both? And then just for yourself, what was that transition like?
I mean, up to that point, man, it was like doing, let's just say, going from hiking 10 miles with a backpack on full of 100 pounds to eventually taking that backpack off and running, right? Wow. In other words, and this is nothing negative. I mean,
it's reality.
Yeah, and, my ex-partner, he's a good dude and we're still friends and whatnot, but when it came to business, it just didn't mesh well, and I was doing double duty for a long time. So when it got to this point, it was like, okay, I learned everything I don't want to do. And now I can trim off all the shit that's weighing us down and all the shit that's really hurting us and be able to take all the lessons I've learned, extract it all, get rid of all the shit we don't want, and go plant a seed in a space that's fertile and be able to water it in a way that makes sense, the way that we want to water it, that I want to water it, that the people that I'm bringing with me want to water it. And it was, I mean, we immediately saw nothing but success, right? Because we learned a lot about what landlord not to have and how many people to have together, and who to have on the team and the dynamic of the team. I mean, it was immediate success in that sense that, I mean, we started seeing the notoriety online, seeing it in the contests, and in it was just, it was good, man. It was good. It was, like I said, I mean, it was like spending 7 years in a boot camp of sort of, learning what not to do, and doing things harder, not smarter, to eventually stepping into a role. It's like, okay, fuck yeah, now I know how to optimize everything. And it's, since then, it's been like Christmas every day.
How did your standards raise for yourself when you became single ownership? Now you're like, okay, I know what I've been having to deal with and go through. Now that this is, I'm the one running the ship, I know what my standards are for myself. I know what I'm not going to let happen. Mm-hmm. Like, how did that change for you, or how did that become like more cemented?
Oh, I think it was more just making sure we have the right people and staff, right? Not allowing certain behaviors to be acceptable, certain it being accountable, right? I've always been about self-accountability and being the first to admit if I'm wrong or if I need to fix something. And again, knowing that I was overworking and not taking enough time for my clients, I've downshifted the amount that I tattoo, nice. So I can focus on those clients, that I can give them the best experience and product I can, as well as downsizing the crew to a crew that when I do give them advice, or I do connect with them, or they give me, like, it's more genuine, right? It's right. More of a connection, as opposed to trying to like navigate a bunch of extra people, that may or may not care. Like, really just focus on those that I believe have earned it. And yeah, I mean, just the being able to learn what we don't want to have at the shop, so we can, standards of quality of studio, of everything. I mean, just the way the fixtures are and the walls are, and the flooring, and all the amenities and such, and it's perpetual. I mean, it's never done, right? Yeah. We're always, I mean, up till the pandemic, we were grinding. Now the pandemic's kind of changed everything. And now we're, got to this kind of real exclusive, more by appointment only, and it's kind of chill, kind of getting back into life. And now it's like, well, now it's time to ramp it up again. So, okay. So we're even going to have, I mean, there's more growth coming, and more evolution. And
what does building a team look like for you? And how's that changed since getting into sole ownership?
Well, luckily, those that I mentioned, Eddie, Carlos, and Aldo, and Megan, but she's no longer at the studio, they came with me. We had one more, Eric, too. He's at another studio. Good dude. Bringing them over, they were there with me through the trial and error, right? So they also appreciated the benefit of the change. And then from there, it's been about building better staff. Because there's some good tattoo artists out there, but it's also making sure that they have the right culture, right? The right mentality to engage with us, because you spend more time with these people than you do your own family. So it's been how we hire people that's been the most efficient way that's really helped us establish, continue to build. And it's not just me hiring people who I think is good. It's starting off with an initial conversation, making sure I feel that they may have the right culture. And then we do what I consider, it's like a hot seat interview. And we've done this a while, but we take the interviewee, we put them on a chair, and then the rest of us sit about 10 feet away.
That's like a panel.
Yeah.
That's sick.
And then we
nice.
And we, we're not really mean, but we try and be a little bit aggressive, just
you're
testing them a little bit.
Yeah.
And seeing how they respond, and then it's like
that's great.
It's a group decision, right? It's the tribe comes together and make sure that way there's more buy-in, more people feel that they themselves participated in it, so they're also willing to take accountability for if something goes up, well, they're a part of it and they may engage in how to make it better, as opposed to like, oh, you did it, I don't want to be part of it. You know what I mean?
Right. Do you feel like there's a bit of an unspoken truth about tattoo shops that the whole shop needs to have a good chemistry? They need to.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's getting talked about enough?
Not enough, man, because tattoo shops have an extremely high turnover rate. I mean, that's just been something that's been tattoo. It's like, oh yeah. Back in the day, clients would be like, "Are you gonna be here for a while?" Like before I open a shop, like, "How long are you gonna be in the shop?" You know, like I don't plan on going anywhere, but no, it's extremely important because we're creatives, right? If the vibe and the energy is not conducive to creativity, then we're not gonna stay long, right?
Yeah.
But that's something I feel, except for I mentioned the two who by no means have left on bad terms or anything. I've like maintained kind of the same crew for better part of, the 13 years.
And how do you maintain? You took the words right out of my brain. How do you maintain a team like that?
Just going back to being a good leader, man, it's like I care about them. I actually give a shit about them, right? I take the time to engage with them. I get to know who they are. I know what they want. And then I'm always taking the time, again, those Tuesday meetings to be real with them, to vent, to be vulnerable, to be transparent, to share my expectations, and get them back from them. So it's reciprocal, right? So
you can't just be the king on the mountaintop.
No,
that's doing like the whole point and click method, and nobody likes that.
Well, that's
connect well.
Well, that's like an old paradigm. It's the command and control, right? That doesn't work anymore. No, nowadays to be a leader, you have to trust people and inspire them, right? And be willing to be the example as well, right? And do what you're asking. And instead of, again, telling people to do, give them the room and give them expectations, but then give them the room and inspiration to do it themselves. Yeah. And it just breeds a better culture all around, right?
Yeah, you bring up the idea of accountability. Was there a moment in your tattoo career coming up where you're like, hey, why aren't these people owning up to their mistakes? Why? Like, did that ever become apparent to you? Was there like a click moment, or is that like over time? Like, hey, whenever that time comes, I want to work with accountable people. I want to work with trustworthy people. Was that something you learned over time, or is it kind of?
Well, I'm a military brat, so I consider it's like a chameleon, right? You move around. You're always a perpetual new kid. I moved like 9 times in 18 years, so never anywhere very long. And so you have to you get to get a feel for people, right? And some people act a certain way, and then or say certain things and act a certain way, right?
Yeah.
So you start to get a feeling for people. But no, I mean in the industry, there was plenty of people that I hired that they said and acted a certain way, but then when the chips were down and things really, when stresses hit them, you see who they really are and how they behave. And it was just, it's a perpetual learning process, especially, when people are, using words and phrases of companionship and love, and then they really are, it's full of shit.
Nothing better than getting a new job and they tell you we're a family here. It's like, okay, I'll be here for a week. Thanks, man.
Yeah. No, it's and even in families, man. Like I don't even talk to my biological father, man.
Hey, me neither. I feel that. Me neither. When you, because you were talking about a little bit earlier how you're starting to go out and you have a lot of trips planned, going out to speak and meet with people. As you've been doing that and you visit tattoo shops outside of New Mexico, have you, even recently, have you noticed the way things are ran, like in a positive way, and you see how things are ran, how they interact, how they do this and that, and that you come back and in those Tuesday meetings you kind of incorporate that? It's like, hey, I went and saw this, maybe we should give it a try. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny, we were just having this conversation on Tuesday. Is there any cool team building things you've seen elsewhere, kind of thing? And obviously we're not identifying much, because that's always been kind of our culture, is to try and find how to be a better creative group of people. And there's definitely I think we kind of take away like cool new techniques of tattooing, cool new ways of laying out a shop, or a way that they made this marketing video, or again, more of those details.
Yeah.
But as for like culture, I'm definitely still always open to paying attention. Actually, I have a business coach. He's a tattoo artist who, Dr. Jeremy Miller. He has a PhD in organizational science. He's a great guy.
In organizational science.
He has a
wow.
This man has a.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, he's got an interesting resume. But he owns a tattoo shop in Austin, Pigment Tattoo, and he actually has been doing these like quarterly or biannually seminars in his local area where he just invites a speaker and invites all the local tattoo shops to come to it and listen to it. So that's cool. I mean, that's like a cool community building type event, which I agree with and think it's great to continue to build up friendships in the industry because of our past of not working well together, which we do. And actually, next week we have something going on. Did he ever talk about Art Fusion for a Cause?
He mentioned it. He has mentioned that, yeah.
So that's where we do live art, right? We go and we set up panels. We put paper on them. And then we have start with 4 panels, 4 artists stand in front of them, and every 3 minutes they move to the right and work on the next one. So it's like this perpetual evolution of art.
Huh.
And we do it live. And this coming Wednesday, the 23rd, I think it is, we're going to be doing it at... This is Wednesday, at the Canvas Artistry on 2nd Street. And we create this live art. We sell $5 raffle tickets. And at the end, we give all the proceeds to a nonprofit.
Oh, cool.
And we invite other tattoo shops. So Aces Tattoo is going to be there, Urban Ecology, Porta Vida, Era Tattoo Studio, or just a few I can think of it.
That's awesome.
And it's cool, man. It's fun. It's a way to potentially win some art. If you like to drink, there's booze, you can have a drink, hang out with people, cooperate, and then goes to all charity.
Do you feel like post-COVID there's been a lot more cohesion in between the tattoo studios here in Albuquerque? And I just ask that because I've noticed that there's a lot more collaboration happening in the music industry. A lot more people working together here. A lot more people are helping each other out, putting each other on bills, working with venues, connecting people better. Whereas beforehand, like you were talking about a little bit earlier, gatekeeping out the ass.
Yeah. So
post-COVID, do you feel like it's affected the culture of tattooing negatively or positively?
Oh, I mean, it affected everything. Yeah, I mean, but we've been doing Art Fusion for years, and we've had good events and some not so. But I think the eye-opening aspect that life is super impermanent, right? Like it's one thing if it's like people die every couple seconds, but when you just see this massive shift in what happened with a global pandemic, I think everybody kind of like loosened up the rigidness of whatever kind of loosened up. And in the tattoo industry, it was like this way or the highway it's always been this way. And then that happened. It was like, well, I guess anything could fucking happen really now. So even though there's still some old school mentality, there's still some conflicts, I feel like just in general, humans are starting to become more interconnected because we realize we're all subject to the same shit. I mean, when something affected every single human being on the planet, we realize that we're all going to the same place, man.
Yeah. And well, in good ways and bad ways, it made a lot of people, I think it made everyone value or like understand like what they value the most in their life. Because everything that was enjoyable about life unfortunately, depending on where you lived, got taken away for a period of time. Yeah. Whether it was 3 to 6 months, whether it was up to a year and a half, like everything that you enjoyed about your life outside of, especially if you hated your 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Everything enjoyable about like going out and seeing your friends, going to concerts, getting a tattoo, going to the gym, like stuff like that, like all of that just got stripped away. And so when everything's opening back up, I found like the people who really did love like whether it's like their side hustles, their passion projects, or if it was their livelihood, like tattooing, it was like the engines just kicked back on like no other for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
And I think it really did create, and I think there's a positive and a negative to this. It created this divide between, okay, like I get that, like I think there's like a base level understanding of like, okay, there are like the super rich and they get away with some things, but we're not going to really talk about it. But then when COVID happened, and I was like, oh, okay, so we can't see our friends and we're locked up, but we've got politicians going out to parties, hosting events and doing this and doing that. It's like, oh, okay, so that's how much all of this really matters. So I'll definitely one of those people like, okay, we're going to do what we want. We're going to do things that we absolutely love. We're going to devote time to what makes us happy and fulfilled rather than how do we survive in a system.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, yes, the pandemic definitely exploited that, but again, going back to that theme of the just everything changing, people don't going into a system to make money, to make a living, to buy your house, 2.5 kids, et cetera, American dream, like that thing is vastly disappearing. Now people want to know that what they're doing has value, that they're a part of something larger. And it's not about the paycheck. Once you get past a certain amount of money, people are like, it's just stressful, right? You want to know.
I'm waiting to hit that point. Can I get past a certain amount of money where I'm not caring too much anymore? Yeah. Spotify, please.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a subjective number.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I don't think there's ever enough, or there's. But what I'm getting at is our desires are changing drastically because we've seen the shift in the world, right? And yeah, I mean, it is good for people to spend their lives doing what they want to do, and feeling like what they're doing with their existence is important. And they, because even when we do what we love doing, it's still, if you do what you love for a living, it's still work. There's still going to be things that are hard. It's like,
yes.
That whole thing, if you never work a day in your life, you're like, well, yes, no. I mean, there's days that shit sucks, but But if it's something you love, you're willing to grind through it, and there's value in grinding, man. There's value in dealing with shit that sucks.
Well, I feel like the society, people are actively trying to move away from things that challenge them, things that are tough, things that any sort of resistance into doing something. Like, obviously, there's levels to which people will put up with, but at the first sign of it, it's like, okay, never mind. I don't want to do it. It's just too hard. Where's my passive income? Like, you know what I mean? Like, stuff like that.
That is definitely an unfortunate thing, and I think that's because of I think it's like us. Like I'm in the 40 range, so like the people right before me in my generation spawned the helicopter parent, and now we have like this what's now called the bulldozer parent, where it's like you let your child. You constantly are hovering or moving all obstacles out of their way so they never have to deal with anything hard. And they always have, help me. When it's really just, some of us came there, it's like, well, good luck.
Figure it out.
Figure shit out. And again, that's why I felt like the 5 to 7 years of grinding through the first, of opening a business and struggling and learning from those hard lessons definitely made it more valuable to get to where I'm at, more appreciation and gain more insight from it. And it's unfortunate that a lot of that's just disappearing from our society. Like we live in a comfortable world now. We go from a comfortable bed to a, nice home or amenities, comfortable car to a comfortable house, or just go to your comfortable computer and start working, right?
Yeah.
To go to your comfortable movie theater, to comfort, food, all these things, just to a comfortable car, back to your comfortable bed, right? Like it's just there's no challenges or stresses or discomfort, and there's so much value in challenge and discomfort, and a lot of people are going to lose out on it, especially as our world becomes more and more automated and more tech driven and robots doing shit for us.
And that's why I tell myself that me losing AC in my car is a good thing, and it's building character. And the drive home in 103-degree weather is going to make me a better man. That's what I keep telling myself.
Sweating your ass off.
Oh yeah. Oh, I come back and I'll go because I wear mostly just polos to work, and even with like my work like branded polos that are a little bit lighter, breathe a little better. I'll take that off and I can put it over my sink and squeegee and just sweat.
Wow.
One thing I want to dive into before we get out of here is fitness.
Sure.
Obviously, fitness is good for everybody. Everyone should be taking care of their bodies. That's kind of like a non-starter. But how does that? Where did that become apparent to you that your fitness is going to tie directly into how well you tattoo? And then where did that go from there?
Well, fitness is just something I've enjoyed for a majority of my life. I think at the age of 12, when my parents got divorced, my mom and my stepdaddy put a weight bench and weights in my room, right? And being a military brat and new kid, always getting beat up, like lifting weights and getting stronger was important.
Right. Yeah.
And then just found the value in wrestling and being a young dumb dude getting in fights and stuff. Anyway, then when I got into tattooing, I talked about the drug issue. I kind of moved away from exercising and gained a lot of weight and suffered. My back sucked. My shoulders killed me. My neck. Everything hurt, right? Because I was sitting in these shitty positions and these crappy chairs for long periods of time, didn't stretch, didn't move around.
We also carrying around all this extra weight that your body's like, hey, we don't need this. Mm-hmm. Why do we have it? And
on this frame, that was way too much weight. And so when I...
what was your heaviest again?
Close to 250, I think.
Damn. Yeah. And what do you walk around at now?
165.
Damn. Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'll ask, like... I forget who I was having a conversation with. We were talking about another friend of mine that had lost a ton of weight, and I asked him, do you realize how much weight you've lost, like in a good way? Like, do you realize, like, because he had lost 48 pounds. I was like, go throw on a 50-pound vest and just exist for 3 hours.
Yeah, just the strain on everything.
Yeah,
man. That's your body, but your organs and all that shit, man. No, when I switched off everything and went monk mode, and the weight fell off, I just felt amazing.
That's awesome.
And they never stopped, right? Because there was only a small period of time when I kind of didn't exercise enough. Since then, when I moved here, it was getting into martial arts and kickboxing and working out too much. But then even I found like hitting things and boxing actually made my hands and grip stronger. I get to articulate my machine better. Because back then we used coil machines, the loud buzzing machines that were heavy, right? Now they're lightweight dildo rotary machines. But no, back then it was like, it was hard on your hand. And doing all the fitness stuff, I noticed that I wasn't struggling with the things that my peers were. And then now that I've been really engaged, not just with technology, but engaging with the community on a national, international level, I'm seeing how many people are struggling with these issues. And there's people out there like my buddy Jordan. He's the hand tattoo therapist. I can't think of his last name right now. He's an amazing dude, but he's a tattoo specific PT, and he's helping tattoo artists with KT tape. That's awesome. Ergonomic stuff for their neck, hands, and such. And, again, noticing that people are struggling with certain things with their posture, and a lot of it could be stemmed from that extra weight they carry around. I don't even get into the diet side of it because the majority of tattoo artists eat like trash. But eating well helps focus. Sitting properly helps back and focus. Exercising gives you energy. Again, being able to, put yourself in positions that you can hold for a long period. Again, adding to more focus, because focus is huge, right? You got to be able to sit and stare at things for a long time, and you want to be able to be energetically capable of executing them successfully.
Because Lord forbid you go on autopilot during a tattoo and you make a crucial mistake,
or you
cut someone,
and you don't do your best work, right? Or there's a whole plethora of reasons you want to do that, but no, I would say in the last several years, it's been apparent that there's nothing for tattoo artists out there. There's been a few stretches and a few things. Jordan, he came out and he's been doing a lot of good work for tattoo artists, but there's no real tattoo-specific fitness because they're not trying to get jacked or shredded. They just want to have a healthier life, right?
Right.
And so teaching them how to use their core better, right? Know how to improve their grip strength. There's other things talking about neck, and we'll get into those in the future. People have found a lot of value in it, and I continue to want to make them. And
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty damn cool. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, man.
So much. This has been a blast. Yeah. This is gonna come out on either Monday or Tuesday. Depends on how well my computer wants to cooperate with me. Do you guys, like you said, you had an event coming up on Wednesday, right? You guys have any other events coming up?
Oh man. I think we're getting to that point in the year where we're kind of not calming down or slowing down, but we don't we'll probably. I think you mentioned Carlos earlier with Master Zombies. We always do like the sleeping bag drive for the homeless. I know that's kind of an annual thing we're going to be doing, and I know there was a talks with Era Tattoo Studio about doing a cancer awareness tattoo event too. So just one of those things, like keep an eye on our social medias and such.
Yes. Where can people find you on social media?
Sure. Archetype Tattoo. on Facebook, but Instagram is obviously it's archetype.tattoo is the space and the place we're mostly at. I'm gonna double check the name of it real quick, but it's Archetype Tattoo on Instagram is where we put up the majority of the information out there. So
awesome. Well, thank you again for taking the time, man. This has been an absolute fucking blast.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. It was a good conversation, and hey, man, I look forward to seeing you in the shop getting some ink.
Yes.
In your tattoo distant future.
I'm looking forward to doing it again. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.